Something isn't sitting right with the Indiana Fever right now. And I want to be precise about that statement, because this isn't about overreacting to preseason noise or manufacturing a crisis where none exists. This is about a pattern. This is about history colliding with the present moment and producing a very specific kind of unease that any serious Fever fan has every right to feel heading into this preseason stretch. Because right now, days before a scheduled preseason game against the Dallas Wings, two of the most important players on this roster are unavailable. Aaliyah Boston is still visibly wearing a leg sleeve. Lexi Hull is sidelined with a hamstring injury. And the explanations coming out of the organization? Murky at best, contradictory at worst. Now let's be fair. Preseason injuries happen. Precautionary holds happen. Athletes manage physical issues all the time, and sometimes the smartest decision is patience over participation. Nobody disputes that. Nobody is demanding that coaches rush players onto the floor before they're ready. That would be reckless, and this conversation is not about recklessness. This conversation is about transparency. This conversation is about trust, and this conversation is about whether the Indiana Fever organization is being straight with its fan base, or whether we are once again watching the same playbook unfold that left people feeling deceived throughout the entire previous season. Let's go back for a moment because context is everything here. Last season, this organization consistently communicated injury updates around Caitlin Clark that did not align with what people were actually observing. The messaging was vague. Timelines were elastic. The phrase day to day became almost meaningless because it stretched far beyond anything that phrase is supposed to imply. Fans watched it happen in real time. Analysts pointed it out. And yet the organization continued projecting a version of reality that didn't match the visible evidence. That happened. It is documented. It is remembered. So when we arrive at a brand new preseason with new expectations and new pressure, and we are once again seeing limited information surrounding key player availability, the reaction from the fan base is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. Those are two very different things, and it's important to make that distinction clearly. Stephanie White addressed the situation publicly, and to her credit, she addressed it. But here is where things get complicated. The language she used created more confusion than it resolved. She indicated that Boston and Hull are probably not going to play in the preseason matchup against Dallas, but then referenced a goal of getting them minutes on Saturday.
Just from an injury report standpoint, do you expect Aaliyah, Lexi, Ty to play tomorrow?
I don't know if we're going to play them tomorrow. I think we'll still probably be cautious with that. I think the goal is probably to get some of the minutes on Saturday if we can, but still, I mean, we've got another week again from that game until our home opener. So we'll take it slow. We'll see how it goes. Every day they've been adding things that they've been doing in the return to play, and so we'll just. There's no reason right now, I don't think, to rush it. So we'll make sure that they're fully ready to go.
What do you mean hold on, man.
Our home opener. So I think the goal is.
Standpoint, do you expect Aaliyah, Lexi, Ty to play tomorrow?
I don't know if we're going to play them tomorrow. I think we'll still probably be cautious with that. I think the goal is probably to get some of the minutes on Saturday if we can, but still, I mean, we've got another week again from that game until our home opener. So we'll take it slow. We'll see how it goes. Every day they've been adding things that they've been doing in the return to play, and so we'll just. There's no reason right now, I don't think, to rush it. So we'll make sure that they're fully ready to go.
Steph, he's going to the second preseason game. What things are you looking for just as far as continuity and building on what you've done over the last few weeks?
Looking for us to tighten up some things on the defensive end of the floor. Ball screen coverage, making sure that we're in the right position. Not allowing two-way goes and some actions that we want to make sure that they only have a one-way go. In initial positioning off the ball in particular, how we pick up the ball, not taking chances. So a lot of detailed stuff on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, we're adding some things this week. So our ability to pick it up and to carry it over, and to continue to build on how we want to play in terms of pace, space, movement, and tempo. We've gotten better every day. They've done a really good job of coming in ready to work, and hopefully that'll show itself.
Those two statements presented closely together do not produce clarity. They produce a new set of questions, because which is it? Are they unavailable for the upcoming game with Saturday as the target? Are they unlikely to play at all during this preseason window? What does probably mean in a professional athletic context when you are talking about players who have been managing physical limitations for a visible stretch of time? Fans deserve better than probably. Fans deserve better than vague timelines wrapped in hopeful language. When trust has already been eroded by a full season of unclear communication, the bar for transparency needs to be higher going forward, not lower. And this is where the unrivaled factor enters the conversation. Both Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull participated in off-season basketball activities at a competitive level. Boston's involvement impacted her availability for Team USA commitments. Hull was active and competing. And now, as the WNBA preseason begins, both players are managing physical issues that are keeping them off the floor. That timeline is not invisible. Fans are connecting those dots, and they have every right to. No one is accusing anyone of negligence. No one is claiming that off-season basketball is inherently wrong or that athletes shouldn't compete year-round. That's their professional right and their personal choice. But when you watch players compete in the offseason, then see them managing injuries heading into preseason, the natural question about workload and preparation is absolutely legitimate. It is not an attack, it is accountability. Now let's talk about why this matters so specifically for the Indiana Fever, because the stakes here are not abstract. Aaliyah Boston is not a complementary piece on this roster. She is the interior foundation. She is the front court anchor. In a league where size advantages can be decisive, Boston represents the primary physical presence this team has inside. And when you actually examine the rest of the roster with honesty, you realize just how thin that margin is without her operating at full capacity. Maisha Hines-Allen is strong. She competes. She brings energy and physicality. But her frame is not imposing in a traditional post sense. And observers have noted that her height differential against guards is not as dramatic as you might expect from a front court player. Demiris Dantas is a skilled offensive player, but her game is built around spacing and perimeter shooting, not punishing opponents in the paint. Michaela Timpson stands at 6'2", which provides some length, but not the kind of overpowering interior presence that changes how opposing teams construct their game plans. When Stephanie White discusses the team's front court depth and interior options, the picture she paints sounds more robust than what the personnel actually suggests. And that gap between the narrative and the reality becomes even more pronounced when the player who is supposed to be the anchor of that interior is wearing a leg sleeve and sidelined from preseason activity. This is not hypothetical concern. This is arithmetic. If Aaliyah Boston is not fully healthy and fully available when the regular season opens, the Indiana Fever's ability to rebound, defend inside, and establish physical post presence is immediately compromised. Teams will attack that vulnerability aggressively. Size advantages that might otherwise be neutralized become exploitable. And the defensive performance that the coaching staff has acknowledged needs to improve becomes even more difficult to stabilize. Speaking of defense, let's go there directly. The Fever's defense was not good enough last season by multiple measurable standards. Stephanie White acknowledged that. Rebounding was inconsistent. Boxing out was an issue. The coaching staff knows it, the players know it, and any objective analysis confirms it. The solution to those defensive rebounding problems is not jumping higher than bigger opponents. You cannot manufacture height with effort alone. The solution is positioning. It is discipline. It is every single player, including guards, finding a body and establishing inside position before the ball comes off the rim. That takes repetition. That takes practice. That takes preseason reps where those habits get drilled, where the muscle memory gets built, where rotations become automatic rather than reactive. But if key players are unavailable during that process, the repetitions are incomplete. The rotations are built around absences. And when those players return, the integration process starts again from a less developed baseline. That is how preseason disruption compounds into regular season inconsistency. And here is the timing problem that makes all of this even more urgent. The regular season opener is not a soft introduction. The Indiana Fever are not going to ease into the schedule with a series of low-stakes matchups against rebuilding teams. The expectations surrounding this franchise are at their highest point in years. Every game will be analyzed, every performance will be contextualized against elevated standards, and losing early, particularly to a team like the Dallas Wings in the season opener, would not be dismissed as an early season adjustment period. It would be amplified, it would become a narrative, it would feed into every skeptical voice waiting to question whether this organization can live up to the moment it has been handed. The Wings are not a pushover. They are competitive, their supporters are passionate, and there are fan bases across this league who would absolutely relish an opportunity to see the Fever stumble at the starting line. The margin for comfortable early season losses does not exist in this environment, which means arriving at opening night with key players still shaking off injury limitations is not an acceptable outcome if it can be avoided. Now let's turn to Lexi Hull specifically because she deserves a focused conversation separate from the broader injury discussion. Lexi Hull earned her 2-year contract. She earned it through performance, through consistency, through the kind of defensive versatility that coaches covet and that box scores consistently undervalue. She is everywhere defensively. She closes out with urgency. She pressures ball handlers. She rotates intelligently. She disrupts passing lanes and creates chaos for opposing offenses in ways that don't always show up in the final statistics, but absolutely show up in the final score. Sophie Cunningham can shoot threes and provide spacing. That matters. But Hull's defensive footprint is different. It is unique to her skill set, and it elevates the entire defensive unit around her. The organization understood that when they committed to her long term. They weren't paying for potential, they were paying for proven production and perimeter defensive impact. A hamstring injury is not automatically a long-term concern. Hamstrings can be managed, they can be treated, they can improve quickly with proper care. But hamstrings can also linger, they can tighten unexpectedly, they can limit explosiveness, even when a player is technically cleared to participate. And for a defender whose value is built on exactly that kind of explosive lateral movement and close-out speed, any limitation in that area is meaningful. The question is not whether Hull will eventually be healthy. She will be. The question is whether she will be fully explosive, fully unrestricted, and fully integrated into the defensive system before the games begin to matter. That question remains unanswered right now. And on the offensive side of the ball, there is a separate but equally important concern developing around philosophy and complexity. Stephanie White has spoken about adding elements to the offensive system, building on what was established, expanding the playbook. That kind of ambition is not inherently negative. Growth requires evolution. A coaching staff that doesn't seek to improve is a coaching staff that stagnates. But there is a real danger in overcorrecting through complexity. This Fever roster has dynamic perimeter talent. They can run, they can push tempo, ball screen action creates advantages. Getting Kelsey Mitchell attacking to her left hand generates scoring opportunities. Transition pace puts pressure on defenses before they can set. Simple, fast, decisive basketball can absolutely outpace more talented opponents because pace itself is a weapon. When you layer elaborate offensive sets on top of that, when you introduce concepts that require recognition, reads, and multi-step execution before a shot is taken, you introduce hesitation. And hesitation is the enemy of pace. Players who are thinking about the right action instead of simply reacting to what they see will always play slower than players whose instincts have been refined through repetition. There is an art to simplicity in basketball. The best offenses in this league are not the most complicated. They are the most efficient. They create high-percentage looks through tempo, spacing, and decision-making speed. The Fever have the personnel to do exactly that if the system allows it. But if preseason is consumed by injury limitations and availability questions, the reps needed to install any system, simple or complex, are being lost. And that's a problem regardless of the philosophy. Here is where everything converges into a single urgent point. The Indiana Fever are entering this season with more riding on their performance than perhaps any WNBA team in recent memory. The visibility is unprecedented. The scrutiny is constant. The expectations, both internal and external, are at a level this franchise has not experienced before. In that environment, showing up to opening night with key players limited, rotations underdeveloped, defensive habits unsharpened, and offensive continuity still being established is not a foundation. It is a liability. Aaliyah Boston needs to be healthy, not mostly healthy, not managing something, fully healthy and ready to compete physically inside against players who will test her from the very first possession of the regular season. The interior is too thin without her at full capacity, and the defensive rebounding problems that plagued this team last year will not be solved by personnel who are not ready to bang. Lexi Hull needs to be explosive, not cautious. Not conserving effort to protect a hamstring, fully unleashed because her value is built on aggression and relentless defensive intensity. A reserved Lexi Hull is a diminished Lexi Hull, and this team cannot afford diminished versions of its most important players. And the communication from this organization needs to be better. It needs to be clearer. It needs to rebuild the trust that was fractured over the course of a full season of misaligned messaging. Fans are paying attention. They are engaged at a level that creates both opportunity and obligation. The obligation is honesty. The opportunity is connection. When an organization communicates clearly, fans respond with patience and understanding, even when the news isn't ideal. When an organization communicates vaguely or allows confusion to persist, fans respond with frustration and suspicion. The Fever have experienced what that frustration looks like. They know what it produces. They have the chance right now to choose a different path. The preseason matchup against Dallas will come and go. The scoreline won't matter in the standings, but what happens between now and opening night matters enormously. Every available practice session matters. Every healthy rep matters. Every clear communication about player status matters. Because when that first regular season possession tips off, this team needs to be whole. Not almost whole. Not approaching whole. Whole. The clock is running. Boston needs to be ready to bang on the interior and protect the defensive glass. Hull needs to be healthy enough to terrorize perimeter players and create the defensive chaos that defines her game. The system needs to be streamlined enough that players react on instinct rather than pause and think. And the Indiana Fever organization needs to look its fan base in the eye and tell them the truth, whatever that truth actually is, rather than leaving people to fill the silence with the worst possible assumptions. Because right now, the questions are louder than the answers. And in a season where everything is elevated, that gap between question and answer is where doubt lives. Get healthy, get clear, get ready. Opening night waits for nobody.